Hey, welcome back to Well, That's Interesting. Oh great, we are once again talking about things so large the human mind can barely comprehend them edition. Today is episode 211. Let's talk about this devastating ancient underwater avalanche and this possible doozy of a hole in our galaxy. My friends, it has been a minute since we traversed the ocean floor, and it's been a minute since we roamed the expanse of our universe. And since it is spooky season, well, what better time than now to revisit these unnerving places and have ourselves a chat about the latest discoveries there. In the first half of the show, something I think we've all experienced, how a relatively tiny event can suddenly escalate into a rampant disaster. My friends, researchers from the University of Liverpool put together 40 years of puzzle pieces mapping out a section of the Atlantic Ocean, and when they stepped back to look at the results, boy howdy, they saw that tens of thousands of years ago, a wee underwater landslide transformed into a devastating climactic event and an avalanche for the ages. We will get into the study, which happens to be the first time anyone has managed to map out an entire individual underwater avalanche of this size. We will get into how they did it. We will get into the numbers of just how insanely large it became. And we will talk about how something like this can affect us today. Yeah, underwater avalanches somewhere off in the world can affect your daily life. And when we find out why, be sure to tell the kids trick-or-treating at your door. It will scare the bejesus out of them. It will make them cry. I am so excited. Then after the break, a topic that's near and dear to my heart, maybe your heart, but definitely this show's heart. I am talking about holes, but more specifically, black holes. I did a quick search in the old Google Drive as to how many episodes we've dedicated to black holes, and it's been at least a dozen, which is about 3 months worth of content. 3 months. If that sounds like a lot, it really is. And I've dedicated so much time to black holes because the more sophisticated our technologies become, the more researchers find themselves witnessing a celestial oddity. When astronomers peered into a cluster of stars in the Milky Way, a cluster called Omega Centauri, they found 7 acting so bizarrely it was as though, and I quote, "they should not be there," end quote. They were orbiting and whizzing about at such colossal speeds, it meant something large, something with a mass that could outdo that of the cluster Omega Centauri itself had to be out there. It just might be a black hole. My friends, we will look upon the beast found by the astronomers of the Max Planck Institute for Astronomy, how and why it's being called a missing link, and we'll talk about how close it is to us. Another day, another hole here at WTI, and hi, I'm Jill Chacha, and if this is your first time listening, welcome to the flock, my whirling business goose. To begin, I'd like to start with some fabulous news as provided by Dr. Chris Stevenson, a sedimentologist from the University of Liverpool's School of Environmental Sciences. Back in August of this year, Dr. C released a press statement regarding he and his team's latest study, the one we're about to faceplant into shortly, and it opened with this banger. Quote, "Underwater avalanches are powerful natural events that happen all the time under the surface of the ocean. They are impossible to see and extremely difficult to measure, which means we know little about how they work." End quote. Yeah, my friends, I am happy to report underwater avalanches are a thing. And they are a thing that, even with what little we know about them, They make avalanches here on the surface where you and I live look like a puppy's sneeze. This is the kind of story, and this is the kind of study that makes you say, holy shit. At the end of the day, it's Earth who's in charge. Let's get into it. If you are unfamiliar with underwater avalanches, or you've never even heard of these events like me up until like 5 minutes ago, that is great. I am so fucking stoked. And that is because it gives me the opportunity to slide into an introduction to these kinds of babies. No pun intended. We're going to slide into an introduction using one of Dr. C's previous jaw-dropping studies. You might want to have a seat. Okay, my friends, get this. On November 18th, 1929, a massive 7.2 magnitude earthquake occurred at 5:02 p.m. local time, about 250 kilometers or 155 miles south of Newfoundland, Canada. The earthquake was felt as far away as Montreal, New York, and Bermuda. On land, it quickly gained the name the South Shore Disaster. For you see, the earthquake, that was only the beginning. It shook loose a portion of the seafloor in what researchers call a large submarine slump, not to be confused with the mega slump we covered in episode 210, why and how mosquitoes are delivered through the mail and how many hellholes are there on Earth. If you haven't checked it out, you should check it out. Those mega slumps occur on land, and these, well, they are underwater avalanches that tell mega slumps to hold their beer. Dr. C and his colleagues used detailed seafloor surveys and sediment core samples to reconstruct the properties of this event, which, by the way, traveled at 68 kilometers per hour or 42 miles per hour, carrying a mixture of boulders, sand, and mud. God, my friends, this moved through the water like a knife, cutting through 12 transatlantic telephone cables like butter. And I want you to stick a delicious pin in that because we are going to get back to it. Not only did this avalanche cut off communities from the world, the amount of debris moving at such a speed triggered a tsunami that literally just smothered them. Again, if you're not sitting, now is the time because I have to tell you the following. The ocean waves moved at a speed of 700 kilometers per hour, or 435 miles per hour, and they slammed into the communities of the peninsula, causing 28 deaths and leaving more than 1,000 people homeless. My overwhelmed business goose. We all know these horrifying details thanks to the damage analysis of those cables. I'll say that again, by analyzing the cables themselves. This remains the first and only giant underwater avalanche to have been directly measured by cable breaks. And again, I want you to jab a big old pin in this. And thanks to Dr. C and the gang's reconstruction of the South Shore disaster back in 2018, by using, like I said, a modern combination of seafloor surveys and core samples, we can confirm these numbers. Now, when you tackle something as infamous as the South Shore disaster, your next study better fucking bring it. Well, I can safely say that Dr. C met expectations and then some. My friends, join me, will you, along the coast of northwest Morocco, a country located in the northwest corner of Africa. Just off the shores of this paradise, in the Atlantic Ocean, hides the Agadir Canyon, which, get this, is similar in size to the Grand fucking Canyon, making it the largest submarine canyon in the world. But it was relatively unexplored until 2013, when it was traversed by a British-German team. The expedition mapped and sampled the canyon using the German research vessel called Maria S. Murian. You can find a picture over of the ship at our social media stuffs. I'm doing great. I feel like there's about 100 tons of sand in my mouth right now. Don't know why. But you can see a picture of this vessel over at our social media stuffs on today's post. Now, the materials and the information provided by this single expedition, along with 300 core samples taken by various other researchers over the past 40 years, were analyzed by Dr. Chris, and you won't believe what I'm about to tell you. My delicate business goose, drop whatever it is you're holding. If it's a sharp object, don't worry. If you're driving, avert your eyes from the road. Don't worry about that either. I am going to need you to pick up your phone and look at the map over at our social media stuffs. Just tap on today's post and swipe past the German vessel Maria S. Murian. And as you can see, right there in the top right corner, there is Agadir. And if you follow the white arrow that begins there and travels across the entire map to the middle of the left-hand side, we just traveled 2,000 kilometers, or a little over 1,200 miles. But we are certainly not alone. By using a combination of detailed seafloor topographic mapping, by comparing the date and makeup of core samples to other known samples, by carbon dating the fossils found in those core samples, my friends, Dr. C and the gang discovered that an underwater avalanche took place along that stretch of 1,200 miles 60,000 years ago, and it was unlike any avalanche previously known. It began in the canyon, up there in the upper right-hand corner, and progressively snowballed with such force that there is evidence of erosion throughout its entire length. I'm talking about 400 kilometers, or about 250 miles. As it plowed its way through Agadir, the buildup reached heights of several hundred meters, collecting a total mass. Get this, it became 4,500 square miles, or 2,600 square miles of stuff, and it was so strong, it carried boulders more than 430 feet up the side of the canyon. But don't worry, it becomes ever so much worse. The now mountain exited the canyon and self-propelled its body another 1,600 kilometers or 994 miles across the Atlantic seabed, eviscerating everything in its path. At its highest peak, the avalanche reached 656 feet tall, and it moved at about 49 feet per second. If you need a visual, and I know you want one, Dr. C came up with this nightmare scenario that's very helpful and adds even more monstrous facts. Are you ready? Neither am I. Let's go. Quote, to put it into perspective, that's an avalanche the size of a skyscraper, moving at more than 40 miles per hour from Liverpool to London, which digs out a trench 98 feet deep and 9.3 miles wide, destroying everything in its path. Then it spreads over an area the size of Germany, burying it under about a meter or 3 feet of sand and mud. End quote. He told news.liverpool.ac.uk. Did you just shit your pants? Because I did. Yeah. Now, I can see your horrified expression from here. You're thinking, what in the holy hell started this? A gigantic earthquake? Some volcanic explosion? Excellent questions, my dear mortal business goose, and I am so damn sorry to tell you this. Unlike every other underwater avalanche studied, those caused by earthquakes, tides, typhoons, river floods, volcanic eruptions, horrendous acts of God, no, this one, what is now the second largest underwater avalanche known to all of humankind, this one started with a small landslide. Cue Stevie Nicks. Yeah, a wee 0.36 cubic miles slid off part of Agadir Canyon, and it became a behemoth. Needless to say, this research is going to change where we put fiber optic seabed cables, which right now carry nearly all global internet traffic. Guess what? It's time to unpin that pin from 1929. Yes, my loves, as so wonderfully explained by Dr. C in his press release, it is estimated that there are now 550 active seabed cables around the world, with a combined length of 1.4 million kilometers, enough to wrap around the circumference of the Earth 35 times. End quote. And a landslide could snip right through 1, or 2, or 12. Or, as we've seen, any cable within 1,200 miles off the coast of a continent. The closest real-life modern example of this happened less than 20 years ago. In 2006, when an earthquake near Pingtung in Taiwan triggered an underwater avalanche moving at 40 miles per hour. It cut through a number of seafloor cables that connected Southeast Asia with the rest of the world. China reported 90% loss of internet traffic to the US, and Taiwan experienced between 74 to 100% loss in traffic to neighboring islands. They were completely cut off. It took 39 days and millions of dollars to get reconnected. Luckily, though, there are so many underwater cables that it just takes some time before being rerouted. That is actually the good news. But the bad news is that it doesn't take an earthquake to shake things up. I'm sorry about that, and the pun, because 60,000 years ago, as we've seen, it just takes a bit of loose material. So, until we have reliable, affordable satellite integration to reduce cable use, I'm hoping the folks who lay internet cables saw this study and are taking action, because that's what happens when new studies come out, right? They're read and people take the appropriate steps, right? That's what we do. After the break, we are leaving. Oh, everything's going to be fine. Everything is going to be fine. We are leaving the bowels of the Atlantic for a cluster of stars that are, cosmically speaking, neighbors in our galaxy. But thanks to some recent sleuthing by a team of astronomers, there may be more out there. And it's big. And it's rare. You need to stay tuned.
Our bodies come in different shapes and sizes, so doesn't it make sense that our weight loss plan should too? Noom builds a personal plan that factors in dietary restrictions, medical issues, and other personal needs so your plan works for you. One of the things I love about Noom is that it doesn't feel restrictive. Instead of focusing on what you can't eat, it helps you develop a healthier relationship with food. You can still enjoy your favorite treats in moderation, which makes it a sustainable approach that I can actually stick to. If you're looking for a personalized weight loss program that actually works, I highly recommend giving Noom a try. It's a program that's helped me achieve my goals and feel better than ever. Stay focused on what's important to you with Noom's psychology and biology-based approach. Sign up for your trial today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. Go check out Noom today.
Stop. Stop. Stop! Had enough? Kick out mucus and quiet the cough with Mucinex 12-Hour DM for long-lasting cough and chest congestion relief. Buy Mucinex 12-Hour DM at your local retailer. Use as directed.
We are back. We are so back. And my friends, my distant business geese in the Southern Hemisphere, I need to ask a favor. Tonight, I'd like you to drive, bus, or hitchhike your way, preferably alone, to a rural area outside your town. Don't tell anyone where you're going, and don't bother to bring a cell phone. It won't work out there anyhow. When you arrived, look up and find the plain of the Milky Way. It's not hard to miss, as its band stretches across the entire night sky. And also not hard to miss, is a cluster above it, almost as large as the full moon. This majesty only you in the southern hemisphere can see is actually 17,000 light years away from Earth. Now, that's far to us, but for space, that's still well within the limits of our galaxy. Its classification and name today is a globular cluster. I'll say that again, globular cluster named Omega Centauri. And if you're asking what in the holy hell is that and what do I mean by today, don't worry, I've got you. According to the European According to the European Space Agency website, esa.int, quote, the exact classification of Omega Centauri has evolved through time, as our ability to study it has improved. It was first listed in Ptolemy's catalog nearly 2,000 years ago as a single star. And side note, Ptolemy, I also gave a Google, and he had a few side hustles. He was an Alexandrian mathematician, astronomer, astrologer, geographer, and because why not, music theorist in Egypt. Okay, continuing the quote. Edmund Halley reported it as a nebula in 1677, and in the 1830s, the English astronomer John Herschel was the first to recognize it as a globular cluster. Globular clusters typically consist of up to 1 million old stars tightly bound together by gravity and are found in the outskirts and central regions of many galaxies, including our own. End quote. But, and big but here, my earthbound business goose, Omega Centauri is not your average cluster. For many reasons, both old and brand spanking new. And before we get into the new stuff, let's talk about the old fun facts. First, its shape. It's actually on the flatter side, and that's because, too, it rotates faster than an air quotes run-of-the-mill globular cluster. And that may be because of old fact number 3, Omega Centauri consists of roughly 10 million, not 1 million, 10 million stars collectively forming a mass where these stars are gravitationally bound. And this leads us to brand new fun fact number 4. Yeah, it has 10 million goddamn stars that are gravitationally bound, but at least 7 of them at the cluster's center are acting a little bonkers. Let's get into it. My friends, for the past 20 years, a little thing known as the Hubble telescope has been taking time-lapse photos of Omega Centauri's millions of stars in order to map their movements. In that time, 500 photos have been made and 1.4 million stars have been mapped. Now you might be asking who has the patience to organize such a thing, and if you think about it for a second, and you're like, oh, the Germans, you are right. Maximilian Haberl, a doctoral candidate at the Max Planck Institute for Astronomy, and his amigos reviewed all of this footage, and wouldn't you know it, they saw that at least 7 stars that, quote, should not be there. This is because these stars were spotted whizzing around fast enough to escape the cluster's gravity and fly off into intergalactic space. But despite this, the stars continue to orbit at breakneck speed near the cluster's center, end quote, from Harry Baker of LiveScience.com. So, what could possibly be so massive that its existence can manipulate the orbit of not 1, not 2, but 7 stars within a celestial object that itself is gargantuan? If you thought about it, and you're thinking, oh, that just might be a black hole, you are not alone. Quote, the most likely explanation for this is that a very massive object is gravitationally pulling on these stars and keeping them close to the cluster's center. End quote. Study lead author Maximilian said in a press release, the only object that could be so massive is a black hole. End quote. Ooh, my friends. The flattened shape of Centauri, its rotation, and its number of stars has led to the general agreement between astronomers that millions upon millions upon millions of years ago, the cluster likely used to be a dwarf galaxy, an itty-bitty thing that orbited the Milky Way. But thanks to the Milky Way's mass, the tiny galaxy was eventually pulled into ours and recombined. I know, delightful. But, however, if at some point it was an independent galaxy, there should be a black hole at its center, just like most other galaxies, including our own. Put a pin in that. Researchers first proposed the idea of a black hole in Omega Centauri way the fuck back in 2008, when Hubble revealed how tightly the cluster's stars were squeezed. Other astronomers, though, were like, I don't know, hold up, maybe. This could be the effect of several smaller stellar mass holes combined. And this went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until here we are. In 2024, with Maximilian and his team, who just made some clickety-clack calculations, and they were like, you know what, you hold up. Not only could this be one black hole, but it's one of the rarest holes of all. The ironically named Intermediate Mass Black Hole, or IMBH for short. Yeah, now, if you've never heard of a middle-of-the-road black hole, again, you are not alone. They are extraordinarily rare. Okay, please, imagine a black hole size scale from 1 to 10. Okay, from 1 to 10, where the smallest black holes over at the one side are between 20 to 100 times the mass of our sun. But on the other end, at 10, we've got supermassive black holes, which, according to science.nasa.gov, can be hundreds of thousands to billions of times our sun's mass. Just incomprehensible. But if you noticed, there's a gap between the ends of the scale. This is where the intermediates are. Wave hello. Hi, guys. These average heroes have a mass between 100 to 100,000 times that of the sun. Now, in theory, IMBHs should be just as numerous as other black hole types out there, but to date, astronomers have really struggled to locate this group and confirm their existence. Now, as to why, well, one theory is that eventually intermediates merge to form supermassive black holes, so they're kind of disappearing. In any case, IMBHs are often referred to as missing link black holes. Old Maximilian here believes he and his team just found one, and it's a mere 17,000 light years away, making it closer to us than Sagittarius A, the 4.3 million solar mass black hole at the center of our Milky Way, which is 26,000 light years away. Again, this one is a 17,000. Not only is it closer, its calculated mass makes it an intermediate champion, clocking in at 8,200 times that of our sun. No, you're right to smile. It's just so average, y'all. It's a random 8,200 times that of our sun. But once peer-reviewed by astronomers around the world, this would make the new IMBH the second largest black hole in our galaxy. So an intermediate may have landed second place, y'all. Yeah, round of applause. I mean, I feel seen. Average. Okay, I'll calm down. Now, like I mentioned, this study has yet to be peer-reviewed, and this hole has yet to be official. Maybe that's why I'm so excited. But thankfully, we may not need to wait very long for the green light. Researchers have been granted time to use the James Webb Space Telescope for further looks into Centauri. So, I'll be watching this hole for us. That's right, and I'm going to report back on it. I've got a good feeling. And thank you for listening, rating, subscribing, telling your friends about the ocean just got way more fucking terrifying. And you're going to sit them down and you're going to tell them that there's just horrible stories. Tell them the horrible story of what happened in Newfoundland, and then tell them how we just, I don't know, just shrug. I don't know what to do about it. Then tell them about, again, black holes. They're out there, and they're everywhere. I can't, guys. This is probably, we're going to have a good year's worth of content on black holes. It's going to be a lot. Buckle up. And an oversized thanks to the folks over at Airwave Media, the podcast network to which WTI belongs. If you love this show, and you do, you love the other podcasts in this family, I'm going to go lie down. And you, please, stay interesting.